If everyone could please take a seat or stand up the back, but as many chairs we can fill, the better. Thank you. Hello? Good evening all. All right, it's on. My name is Kelsey Brennan, and on behalf of the WA Mining Club, I would like to welcome you all to our final Sundowner of 2020. Now, would it be an end-of-year speech without starting with, wow, what a year, or gee, we got through such unprecedented times with COVID-19? But look, in all seriousness, despite the interesting year we've had, We've had a really successful year here with the WA Mining Club Young Professionals. In early March, we held our Upskilling, Diversity and Advancing Your Career event at the Flower Factory, where Karen Peterson and Peter Cook took to the stage. In July, we shifted gears, holding an online event, Exploring Social Licence, where Ivan Vella, Paul Evingham and Amanda Lacaze had a panel discussion with Sam Retallick moderating. In September, we were back to live events, where we had the sellout presentation by Peter Bradford at the RSC Arena on the future of mining. And here we are today, with another sold-out event for our final Sundowner of 2020. We have a panel of industry leaders here with us tonight who will be discussing risk, exploration and technology. And for the future, we have a big 2021 planned, and we'll release more information on that soon, including a YP members only event. So I would now like to pass over to Josh Snow, who is the chair of the WA Mining Club Young Professionals, and he'll address the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey, and welcome to everyone in attendance tonight. What a great time to be in Western Australia. Before commencing tonight's proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, their ancestors and elders, past, present and emerging. Over what has been an unprecedented time for us all, we thank our annual YP partners, being Grounded, Goldfields Australia, IGO, Ruck, Micromine, and tonight's event sponsor, Sandfire. Without these sponsors, events such as tonight would not be possible. We are extremely grateful for these companies and their commitment to the next generation of mining professionals. There are many representatives from these companies in the crowd tonight, so if you see them, personally, I encourage you to say thank you. Additionally, I would like to thank the Young Professionals Committee members who are pictured on screen, who have put in many hours of hard work to pull this event together. Or is it not? Thanks to Callum, Kelsey, Ellen, Eric, Yellowworry, Jordan and Josephine. If you have any questions on how to join or become more involved with the young professionals, please come and chat to any of us tonight. The WA Mining Club Committee has recently had some personnel changes, and we thank departing club president Damien Quayle for his years of service to the club. We congratulate Nat Taylor, who's in attendance tonight, on taking the club presidency, and Craig Hook, who's also in attendance tonight and will present later on, for vice president. A further congratulations to Callum and Jordan from the YP committee for their recent election to the head committee. On a final note from me, I remind everyone that we have officially launched the club's buddy program. This buddy program allows young professionals members to be paired with a standard member. This pairing is designed to facilitate mentorship, learning opportunities and growth. Craig Hook will provide a detailed update on this later in tonight's proceedings. I now pass back to Kelsey to introduce tonight's panel and to kick us off. Thanks all.
Thank you, Josh. All right, we now move over to the panel discussion. We're very fortunate to have 4 industry leaders joining us today to discuss the importance of balancing risk, exploration and technology here at the stunning Ritz-Carlton. 2020 has been a tough year for Australia, and despite the challenges of COVID-19 and the resulting dislocation and disruption, WA's resource sector is helping lead a nationwide economic recovery. The exploration industry is at the forefront of this effort, with both established and emerging miners making discoveries that prove WA will remain an internationally renowned mining province for years to come. But these discoveries don't come without taking risk and exploring new innovative technologies. The WA Mining Club YP are proud to welcome Alex Dorsch, Scott Williamson, Jordan Rogers and Holly Bridgewater to lead this discussion. So firstly, if I get Alex to come up on stage. Alex is the Managing Director and Chief Executive of Chalice Gold Mines. Alex has overseen one of 2020's most incredible discoveries, the Julimar Nickel Copper PGE project, which is just 70 kilometres northeast of Perth. Alex will be sharing insights on taking a company from resource sector junior to a market cap of over 1 billion Aussie dollars. Jordan is part of the Gold Roads Resources Discovery and Growth Technical Team and has worked primarily in exploration in the underexplored and highly prospective Yamana Greenstone Belt in the eastern goldfields of WA. Jordan has also been an integral part of the WA Mining Club Young Professionals and is a member with us. Scott? Over the past year, it has been a real formative year for Blackstone's Minerals Manager Director, Scott Williamson, with the company's acquisition of its 90% interest in the Tarkwa nickel project in Vietnam and Blackstone securing investment from Korea's largest nickel-rich cathode minerals manufacturer. Scott will be talking to the exciting prospects for Blackstone and battery metals exploration. And lastly, Holly. Holly is an exploration geologist, crowdsourcing lead at Unearthed, and an advocate for adoption of open data initiatives. As panel moderator tonight, Holly will be driving the discussion about the challenges and rewards of exploration in the resource sector. We'll take a few select questions from the crowd at the end, so have your thinking caps on throughout. But for now, I'll hand it over to Holly.
Is this on? Yeah. And congrats, Kelsey and Josh and the whole team on a really awesome event, such a good turnout. Well, let's get into giving these guys a hard time with some good questions. So we're going to start off with a topic that we've all been hearing a lot about recently. Alex, I'll pass to you first, but how do you see the outcome of the US election impacting the Australian resource industry?
Wow. Big question first up. Look, I think we're all sick of hearing about the politics, so I won't touch on that side. Obviously it's been a pretty dramatic few weeks in the US. Look, I think the implications for the industry as I see it and what I've been sort of contemplating over the last couple of weeks is, a Biden presidency with a potentially what looks like a Republican-controlled House and Senate has some ramifications for the Australian industry. I think Biden has positioned himself as less of a nationalist, so I can see him sort of taking a bit more cooperative approach, particularly when it comes to critical mineral supply, like securing supply chains within the US only. I can see him sort of working a bit closer with allies as well as elsewhere in the world. I can see the Trump agenda. I think a lot of people have been off-put with the unpredictability of Trump. So I can see some more stability coming through macro policy throughout a lot of different nations now on the back of that, which hopefully brings a bit more stability to capital markets. Obviously, capital markets have been fantastic this year, but let's hope there's just some reduced volatility, and I think that flows down to the Australian market as well, in that we get greater appetite to take risk when we don't see that volatility. So hopefully it's a big year for particularly the critical metals, those battery minerals, but also the capital markets being supportive of companies taking more risk.
And yes, Scott, on the battery metals side, obviously Biden's position is a lot more around the green technology and climate change. How do you think that's going to impact that side of the market?
Yeah, I think it's I suppose it's a great opportunity for the US to focus on what everyone else in the world is already focused on, which is climate change. So it's at Blackstone we're obviously pro-Biden because we're looking at a green energy future and the battery metal space, and we really need to focus on the battery metals because we do have a problem here with supply and of these critical metals being nickel, cobalt, lithium. So yeah, we're definitely going for Biden and climate change, and yeah, so it's we're pretty happy.
Oh. And sorry, and Jordan, what about from a kind of gold industry perspective?
From a gold industry perspective, Trump was actually very good for the gold price. So with Biden taking up the reins, we're going to see a weakening gold price, but the humanist in me doesn't take too much offense to that. It's like Alex said, Biden's government is going to reintroduce stability, and the global market is going to regain confidence in the US, so that's only going to benefit everyone.
And I do wonder with the Australian industry as well, Biden may potentially bring in some harsher local legislation or local some miners there, so it might also have a positive impact on our industry on that side. All right, so moving on to technology. Scott, what do you think the most exciting technology is coming up for the exploration industry? And are there, on top of that, are there any other business models that you think that could disrupt exploration?
Yeah, so my background as an engineer, I should talk more about engineering, but the geology and probably the geophysics is probably what excites me the most at the moment. The ability to go into areas that have been previously explored with technology that was used 20 years ago or even 5 or 10 years ago, and being able to go through with the modern geophysics and see deeper undercover and to see what the previous explorers didn't see. I think geophysics is one that really excites me. The other one's probably metallurgy. What we're seeing in the nickel metallurgy space is some really smart, I suppose, engineering really around that sort of nickel metallurgy and base metals metallurgy. So they're the real key drivers, particularly from a Blackstone perspective. So I suppose from a mining engineering perspective, that was what I studied at uni. I suppose it's all about the electrification of equipment and automation as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the industry.
There is. And Jordan, with your kind of, I guess, leading the way with kind of GIS and data science, and is there anything you can comment on that from a tech perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, the GIS space is evolving more and more every day, but I actually wanted to talk a little bit about an initiative that we're taking up on site. Gold Road are a sponsor and early adopter of a tech called Detector, which we see has massive potential to disrupt the greenfields gold exploration industry. I mean, it has the capability of rapid overturn of low-level gold analysis. So we're talking about 6 to 8 hours of up to maybe 20 parts per billion detection level of field samples. So you are able to rapidly follow up and turn over projects and targets and assessments, which has massive ramifications for especially the juniors who might be really restricted in their drill seasons or moving targets through to the market, all sorts of things.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, look, I have to agree with Jordan there. I think what excites me in that greenfield space is AI, and I don't think any geologists in the room should be worried about AI adoption. I think if anything, it's just going to make geologists much more effective. It has the ability to do what 100 people locked in a room for 8 hours. It has the ability to do that in literally seconds. So it just takes out a lot of the that basic computational crunch work can just be fed to an algorithm now. And give you and you're actually able to see things in data that the human eye just can't see. And so what excites me is how many potential discoveries are there out there in existing data that just haven't been looked at with the right subtleties, the right patterns, the right these pattern recognition technologies around now are amazing. So that is an exciting space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially with the amount of, particularly in Australia, the publicly available data that we have that we could look over. I think it would be fascinating to see what comes up that's hidden in that data set. And I know there's a lot of people doing a lot of work on actually how do you deal with data sets of that size. So I'm going to have a short follow-up question. So whoever wants to jump in first, go for it. We talked a lot about tech, about a lot of disruption to many industries really comes from tech-enabled business model innovation. So are there any business models that you guys see that could disrupt our industry?
I'll jump in. I think there's a business model that's very effective in North America called the project generator business model that doesn't really have. Well, I guess Chalice may be the first sort of hybrid project generator that's really sort of entered the Australian market. I think making greenfield discoveries is highly specialised competencies. It requires those highly specialised competencies. So if your business model is basically based on nurturing and building those competencies in-house, then that's going to give you a huge advantage. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be able to do everything in the industry. You can just do the early stage exploration work, say, and then move the project to another operator, or even in the development phase or in the mining phase, you allow another company to. I think that will begin to become more prominent in the Australian market. But whether or not investors accept that model and understand that model, I think that's a challenge for all of the juniors looking to adopt that.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think it'd be interesting to see how we talked a bit about AI and machine learning. There's quite a lot of companies coming up now which are really leveraging that. I'll be interested to see if there's any kind of new business models that come out of that, and if some of those companies doing that work actually then start coming into more to the space and generating projects as well.
Yeah, just on that. So I think a lot of that's driven by the access to capital. So when the capital was tight, we had to chat to the majors to sort of help us fund us into production, and that's what that sort of model is built on. And I think what we've done at Blackstone is a little bit different business model, and not that it's actually a model, but what we went and did is we went and found the customer first, and then we asked the customer, what do you need? And then we went and grabbed the customer, and we went and looked for the minerals that they required. So it's all about access to capital, and capital is what drives new business models.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Jordan, based on some of the stuff we were talking about new discoveries, what region of Australia do you think will have the most exploration success over the next decade?
I actually think that there will probably be two main trends coming out of exploration in the next decade. I mean, thinking about what we've all been going through over the past 12 or so months, investors are pretty scared at the moment. So I think we're going to see a real focus on renewed brownfields targeting, because investors are going to see that as a safer bet, because we've been doing some amazing work in developing up and evolving our understanding of mineral systems, and even, like we said before, some of the tech that's evolving, like our 3D seismic. You can take that and take it to a deposit that's been known and has been around for a few decades, but didn't have the you just didn't have any of the knowledge or the technology to be able to target that at depth. I mean, you look at Bellevue and Fosterville. It's a classic example of applying new learning, new tech, and look at what a win they've had. So I think we're going to see a real focus on that. But also, I mean, I can't not say that we're not going to see an increase in undercover exploration, being in a company that specialises in undercover exploration. Again, you look at the success that we've had up in, the Patterson with Winu, Havieron, in East Pilbara. These are areas that have previously been written off and untargeted, and now it's proven that there are big discoveries to be made out there. It's like where we are in the eastern Yilgarn, we have a historically really poorly explored region because of its cover. I mean, until the last 50 years, most people didn't even believe that there was a greenstone belt out there. But yeah, Gold Road has proven that there are multi-million ounce discoveries to be made out there. So I think more of the juniors who might be a bit more willing to take that risk will start to move into those areas of undercover exploration a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Gold Road story is such a great one, in that, you know, it just took that going that a little bit further away. And there's so many, like you say, the juniors have much more opportunity to kind of, I guess, place those bets and try those things out. So Scott, what do you think in terms of regions for success?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to sort of getting out of our comfort zone and sort of going into some of the jurisdictions that are a little bit more difficult, and that's basically what we've done at Blackstone. So it is about going in, understanding a new mining law and a new culture and all, I suppose, going in and assuming that we've got the strong geology that we can see, and then, but really, I suppose, unlocking new geology. And I think one of the things that is really important is that unfortunately, a lot of the good geology is in more difficult jurisdictions. So, and that's the ability that we have as a junior, is we can take on a little bit more risk and with respect to jurisdictions, but we're taking on fairly low technical risk with the geology that we go into. So, yeah, from our perspective, we think there's a lot of untouched, strong geology out there in more difficult jurisdictions, and we'll continue to pursue that, because we're open to rolling the sleeves up and getting on the ground and meeting the local people and talking to the local government and doing the hard work, which is, it's not geological, but it is hard work. So yeah, as a junior, that's sort of, we take on a bit more risk with respect to jurisdiction, but geologically we've got some of the best geology we've ever seen.
I think, yeah, if I can add to that, I think it has been interesting to see, like, a lot of exploration companies, you know, have been pulling back to Australia in the last few years, just because some jurisdictions, particularly Africa, you know, become more and more problematic. You know, whether that dynamic now, or the pendulum swings the other way, will be interesting to see. But what's been clear is that, you know, we've been willing to, you know, drill under 250 metres of cover in Australia. We've been willing to take that risk, but, you know, we've been unwilling to, you know, enter and go to, you know, known geological occurrences in West Africa. So I think I think is a cyclical dynamic, and at the moment there's a pullback out of Africa. I'm sure, you know, the pendulum will swing the other way eventually. But at the same time, it has been very fruitful for Australia, like all these explorers coming back and almost, you know, coming back to home soil, you know, and really starting to, you know, push the boundaries down at depth, you know, has resulted in some fantastic discoveries, like in around Australia. So I can only think that trend's gonna continue. We'll have good discoveries on home soil, but yeah, maybe as certain jurisdictions de-risk, we'll see companies going offshore again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been that trend, and particularly with the conversation on risk, like, it really has swayed into much more of that, as you said, what companies willing to take on that technical risk, but not that kind of sovereign risk or different types of risk, working in more challenging locations. And I do wonder if, you know, back to some of that stuff we were saying before, and the machine learning AI, like, if we will still see a lot of success in really well explored areas where there's just the data gets looked at, you know, areas like Mount Isa and areas where, you know, I'm sure there's another big copper deposit there. So Scott, kind of on the kind of commodities angle, what kind of commodities do you think we'll see more focus, and do you think there's anything that the industry needs to pivot to be successful in those?
Yeah, so I think there's been a real lack of, I suppose, focus on some of the base metals, particularly nickel, copper. These are key parts of the green energy future, and like, if you take it, so next year there'll be 60 IPOs and 50 of them will be exploring for gold. So it is difficult to find and access capital to go and hunt for difficult geology, which is base metals. Base metal sulfide geology is difficult, and unfortunately it's much easier to go and raise money for gold. So what I'm seeing is that there's unfortunately a significant supply crunch coming for particularly nickel and copper. So what I would say is that your gold stocks are going up today, but next year it'll be your nickel and your copper stocks.
Well, Jordan, how are you going to answer that?
I think we all know that gold's always a pretty safe bet. But I actually do agree with Scott. I think companies, with investors, if you don't have a particular ESG rating now, as particularly in Australia, you're not going to get the money coming in from your investors. And, we're seeing such a push because of, our climate crisis. Our renewables are going to be critical, that infrastructure. So you are going to see a real uptake in having to mine for those materials. Absolutely.
Alex?
I was going to say that, like, the ESG side's working on both sides of the coin at the moment. Like, the investors are demanding it, but at the same time, the consumers, people are demanding, carbon offsets. They're demanding, that their electricity bill is carbon neutral. Like, it's coming from all angles. So there's no doubt we can avoid it. And I think I agree with Scott. Like nickel is a commodity in absolute stress at the moment. There's so little class 1 nickel, there's no development ready class 1 nickel, projects there sitting on the shelf, or there's very, very few of them. And the ones that are producing are in very problematic jurisdictions. So there's going to be a growing, investor appetite for these, secure green metal sources that the Western world just can't seem to deliver at the moment. So it will be an interesting dynamic to see how that plays out. And I think, gold is a bit of a constant. I think, like, gold is money, as they say. So, I think we're still going to have money in a few years. But, I think the printing presses are likely to keep going for some time as well. So I can't see too much headwinds for gold, in the short term.
Good to know. I think, actually, going back to what you were saying before, Scott, on thinking about the customer first, I think for some of these battery and critical metals, particularly things like rare earths, it can be a real challenge for explorers as well, because you can't necessarily sell that product anywhere. You've got to really think about who's going to be buying that and what your product is going to be. So I think that adds kind of an extra challenge when you're exploring for those commodities as well, which are becoming more critical. So pivoting the discussion a little bit, Jordan, I'd like to see if you could talk a little bit about the biggest risk that you've taken in your career.
The biggest risk? Well, luckily, risk depends on your perspective. For me personally, the biggest risk I've taken in my career would have been probably to spend the formative years of my career with a junior, now to mid-tier company. There's always, moments of uncertainty in, either job security, cash flow, takeover, depending on the success that you're having. But on the other hand, I was granted opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten in, the first 10 to 15 years of my career if I'd gone to, one of the majors. I've represented Gold Road at Diggers and Dealers, over in Colorado at Precious Metals. I've been able to travel over for courses over east, and was able to take another risk, which was to actually move from my focus on field geology into my postgraduate, which was geographic information science. So that risk is, I was doing that while working full time. Am I going to be able to manage that workload? Am I going to be supported by the company, which thankfully I was fully supported, and now have found myself working in that role full time for the company.
That's awesome. And I think it's, it's almost that perspective of opportunity instead of risk.
Absolutely.
Alex, what about you?
Look, I think, like, a few years ago, coming into Chalice, Chalice was hungry for an asset and had a decent balance sheet, and we effectively bet the company on greenfield exploration. So we effectively said we are only going to drill holes into areas where there's no drill holes, and that was a hugely, I guess, in hindsight, a hugely high risk, bet. but we were able to mitigate that by just having so many different, projects, in the portfolio. We were able to just make sure, the right science was going into each one. They were each prioritised and ranked, and it's turned into, we've made a great discovery just outside of Perth here. I think that was probably the biggest risk on a corporate level for me, my career, and I think, I think to echo what Jordan said, like joining a junior, people think about as risky, I think, is the default position, but it's all about your personal risk tolerance, I think, and your risk appetite, because taking on risk is where you do get the reward. And to if you do have a low risk appetite, I would say that's fine. But if you do feel like you can roll the dice and you're confident in your ability, then I would advocate very strongly to get involved in a junior company and take a little bit more risk on. But yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to. I had my personal circumstances, and I had the support existing in Charles, obviously to guide me when I first joined the company, and certainly, you need to have a balanced approach to it.
I think that's interesting as well, that perception of what's risky for some people versus others. Like talking about going into juniors versus the majors. I think you could have people which would say both were equally risky depending on how you look at it in terms of the career movement. What are your thoughts, Scott?
So just from a obviously Blackstone perspective, going and buying a nickel mine in Vietnam was pretty risky, and
what are we talking about?
At the time, I think we had a market cap of $5 or $6 million. Couldn't raise any money. We were down and out, and luckily, we sort of went back to our house broker with our tail between our legs and said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll be able to find the money." And they said, "Oh, how much do you need?" And they sort of went again, but so luckily that worked. But from a career perspective, and that was a pivot, and I suppose whenever you pivot a career or a company, it's all about risk. And I pivoted my career halfway through and changed. I went from a sort of junior mining engineer to a senior mining engineer, heading towards mine manager. General manager is a very structured path in the mining industry, and said, "Oh, no, I'm not really that keen on sort of doing FIFO and all that." And I thought I wanted to change my lifestyle a little bit. It was more lifestyle driven. I went to the dark side, they call it, and became a mining analyst. And basically, the mining analysts are, for people that don't understand broking, it's you're basically one above the cleaner. So so here I'm nearly mine manager, and they put me in straight above the cleaner, and I'm going, okay, well, this is great. So 8 or 10 years as a mining engineer, and now I'm just above the cleaner. So that was, it was pretty risky, and but I enjoyed that industry, and I learned a lot about capital markets and stockbroking, and that obviously has put me in this position now. But so it was a bit of a risk, and took a massive pay cut and all that. But it probably made my career, really.
Yeah, that's a great story, Scott. And I think it is that story though of that kind of like persistence though, and that you're taking risks, but it was thought through, and there was a strategic goal there as well. And by putting yourself in challenging situations, like the reward was really great in the end. And I think there's so much reward when you take the risk. So Alex, what do you think the core skills are that young professionals should be looking to obtain to be successful in exploration?
That's a good question. When people join my company, there's two things that I talk to them about. I talk about problem solving, which applies to almost every discipline. Your ability to solve a complex problem by splitting it into multiple smaller, simpler problems is a critical skill no matter what you do. So I think that's the first one I'd emphasise to young professionals out there to investigate how to solve complex problems, because it's not immediately obvious when you're sitting in a lecture theatre in university that's actually what you're going to be doing in your career. But on the flip side to that, there's if I think about again, what I talk about with new starters is communication. So if you're not problem solving, what are you doing? Really, you're communicating. So there's no point, being really good at solving a problem, but then just holding the solution to yourself and just being a one-man band. And then, it's fantastic if you go and solve the problem, great, but you need to be able to communicate with people what actually you've done, how you did it, why you did it. That I think is the real two core competencies that apply for anyone, any as I say, any discipline. So I think those two are fundamental. You need to have that. And I'm not saying you need to be able to communicate at board level, when you're a graduate. But I'm saying you just need to be effective at getting your point across, because so often I think people do one thing well and not the other, and it's all about that combination of the two. But then on a third point, value. You need to understand, no matter whether you're at the bottom of an organisation or you're at the top, you need to understand how that business actually makes money. And how you can add value to that business. And I think a lot of that, again, in tertiary education is a bit glossed over. You can be, under the impression that you're solving technical problems that don't have any benefit other than that technical solution. But you really need to translate that into value and really understand how your part and how your skills translate into value for the business. So that they're the sort of the things I talk about with new starters, and typically people look at me and go, oh, I thought it was about mining engineering, or I thought it was about geology, and I'm like, no, that is just your discipline, but you need the basics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think, particularly in a smaller organisation, encouraging people to actually be able to understand the entire business and think about that from the whole system and how they're contributing to that is so important, because you can have the opportunity to move the dial so much more in those smaller teams. Jordan, what about you?
Excuse me. I think Alex really hit the nail on the head, and also thinking about things from a purely exploration focus, another really critical soft skill that people need to be able to develop, is resilience. This is a turbulent industry, and if you do focus on exploration, you're going to have to roll with the punches, get back up. It's not always going to be the good times, and if you haven't developed any resilience, you're going to get burnt out and just end up leaving the industry completely. But I guess also from probably a bit biased technical front, I see every day our industry is more and more technologically focused. We are, as we do go undercover, we are relying more and more on our technology. So having that technological competency, that, basic data science, intelligence is going to really be critical over the next coming years. Because if you are just narrow-minded and only want to learn one platform, or, are not interested in, taking on that sort of tech and just want to do old-school geology, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and I think that really goes back to your point before on that resilience piece. Like, I think if you look at a lot of the stats around the future of work, it's estimated that people coming into the industry now will have to reskill and get new roles like 3 to 4 times throughout their career. So I think part of that resilience is building that adaptability and being able to change and being able to be really, really diverse.
Absolutely.
Scott?
So I suppose my sort of advice would be don't focus too much on the role or the title or actually what you're sort of doing at any particular time in career, but focus on who are your sort of leaders and your mentors, and as long as they're the sort of people that you aspire to be, then that's a really good position to be in. So I started my career at Rio Tinto, and I saw the shiny lights, and very quickly I went smaller and smaller and smaller, and now I'm in a situation where I'm working for a company called Blackstone that no one even cares about. But I have a board and management team that I now consider my mentors, and And so it's all about your leadership team and your mentors, and really sort of choose your path based on the people that you're working for.
Hey, we do care about your company though. I'm trying to make us feel bad. All right, so we're going to wrap up and then we'll go for some questions. So to finish, in a quick fire, 30 seconds each, what is your parting advice to the young professionals in the room tonight?
Look, I think a few of them have been covered, but yeah, understand your risk appetite. I would say, like, first of all, and know, I guess, find your passion as well. If your risk appetite is high and you're passionate about geology, I think an exploration company is for you. So that's what I say. But yeah, just focus on the passion. I think that you got to be passionate. You got to actually really love being at work.
Oh, sorry. Mine is probably be your own biggest supporter. We've come a really long way as an industry, but we've got a really long way to go. And there are still many people who will be very quick to try and tell you that you are not worthy enough of an opportunity, or that you can't achieve a goal that you've set your mind to. And you've got to be in your own court, because you're the only person that can get there. Yeah, that's about it.
Mine would be, don't be scared to pivot. You may be a geologist today, but don't be scared to hang out with the engineers or the metallurgists or even the accountants if you're that way inclined. Because, yeah, what you are today may not be what you're going to be later on.
I don't think you're selling it for people to go and hang out with the accountants. All right, well, I think we're going to wrap up there and take some questions. So if you could join me in thanking the speakers.
All right, so we've got time for just a couple questions. We've got a roaming mic here. We've got one down here. Callum. You got to be quicker than that, Cal. Go on.
Hi, Benny from Zenith Search. A lot of good topics discussed around risk and assessing risk with these new projects. I'm curious, Scott, Alex, whilst you guys are assessing the risk of these projects, are you looking at skill shortages as part of your risk profiles?
I think it's more of a problem for you, mate. I'll start. So in Vietnam, we've got some of the best skilled labour I've ever seen. I've worked in Africa and Australia, and so my Vietnamese geologists are as good as my Australian geologists. So I'm in a very, I suppose, lucky position. So, well, I do have West Australian assets, which we do struggle for labour, and yeah, so I do have the same problem that he has, but not as big as his problem right now.
Like definitely skill shortage it doesn't go away. Yeah, I think particularly in Australia, I think we've got the benefit of having a project in a very favourable location. If you like to live in a nice setting. We potentially might have a mining operation, in a very nice place to live. So I think that hasn't been lost on people. I think people are really seeing the attraction of, not having to go to an airport, not having to fly out to the middle of nowhere to go to a mine site. For us, we're obviously not there yet, and not opening the mine tomorrow. But I think the pain points in where we're at the moment are geologists, fieldies, just people I think who are as the industry gets more successful, as more exploration success is had, we're a little bit of a victim of our own success because then it just gets harder and harder to find the geologists. So that's where we're at the moment. But I think over the longer term, like we've got a real we've got the ability to have a mining operation that's could have a live-in workforce, which I think will be a real novelty for WA. So look, I'm hopeful that'll be less of an issue for us.
Yeah, for sure. One more question, anyone? Oh, Cal, all the way back over here. Making you run.
I'm Vicky from Terra 50. You've spoken a little bit about technology, and I'm just wondering if you feel that the spend of technology investment has gone down during the last 12 months over COVID, or if you feel that you'll be investing more because of COVID.
I'll kick off. That's a really good question. I think that in the past 12 months, we've seen a lot more targeted spending on technology. So where previously people might have been able to come in with really fancy presentations and all the glitz and glam, people are much more critical now, so they need to see a real value-adding input to their business model before they're willing to actually invest.
I think from a general kind of digitization piece as well, like there's just been a huge ramp up in digital technology through COVID, and from a mining perspective, thinking about remote operations, like how could we actually completely remotely operate a mine with no people there, and is that going to be a genuine situation in which we find ourselves? So I think it's been a really interesting time to see some of those technologies, particularly around remote work, like really accelerate in the last 12 months.
Yeah, it's definitely an increase from our perspective. So last year I went to site once a month for the whole year almost, and now this year I haven't been to site, and so we're operating out of my home office in Perth. So it's amazing what you can do when you're forced to do it with the technology we've got. We're training our local geophysicists in Vietnam via Zoom. Like it's happening. We're forced to do it. And previously we would fly a consultant into Vietnam. We don't have to do that. So it's we're saving a lot of money. But most importantly, we're pushing the I suppose expertise into the local people.
Maybe slightly less related to the question directly, but one of my worries, I guess, is as we all work remotely, is I guess does that have an impact on mentoring and inducting new people? I think that's a huge challenge, which I think the office environment is that's one of the strongest points of the office environment, is that you're very quick to onboard and you're very quick to get an understanding of the company's culture. If you're all sitting behind a screen, I just don't think you're going to get a sense of the company culture. So that's a concern for me about the tech that we're seeing sort of born out from COVID. But yeah, which direction it goes, I'm certainly in favour of the office environment. I think just to spend time with people, you can't put a price on that. You just can't get the same impact when you're talking to someone over a video call.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much. Just such an insightful discussion, some really great insights and suggestions. So I think it's quite an exciting time to be a young professional, particularly if you're a geologist. So, yes. All right, well, if we just have one more round of applause, please. We've just got a parting thank you gift for each of you as you exit the stage, and we'll grab some photos at the end. Cool, thank you. All right, while they're doing that, we've pulled the name out of the hat for the door prize, and the winner is Zed Bringenshaw. Where are you, Zed? Yeah. Come see me after. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'll come see you. Thank you. All right. Well, that is all from me. I'm just going to pass over to Craig. Craig is just going to share some more information on the buddy program that Josh touched on earlier, and then we'll conclude this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey. What a fantastic discussion that was. And what a fantastic group we have tonight. It's just unbelievable to see so many smiling faces out there. Now, I have that tough part in the run sheet where you're all on a high, and I know you all want to network and get to the bar, and here's me in the middle. So I'll try and be quick. Josh said, be really quick, whatever you do. However, Josh and those that know me well know that I also like to tell a little story. So I will take a couple of minutes. About 3 years ago, I was looking around and thinking, how do we energise the mining club? And I remember meeting 4 emerging and very experienced female leaders in our industry. One of them sat around and said, Craig, why is it when I go to a mining club event that we're in a dark room and it's full of blokes wearing dark suits? Well, Sam, what I can say is unfortunately the dark suit's still here, but at least it's a bright room and I can see everybody. And we've been working very hard in the last 3 years to improve the diversity of the mining club. 3 years ago, we had 0 young professionals. Today we have over 100, and that makes up about 15% of our membership group. We had about 9% female participation rate. We've now doubled that, 18%. Okay, it's the industry average, kind of a tick, but we can do better. And what I'm really, really proud about this year is we actually have our first members that identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Absolutely fantastic. But we've got to keep this journey going. We're on this journey and we've got to keep going. And it's going to come from the young professionals in the room. So when you get a little bit older, because I think, Josh, what's it about, 10 years is about the cut-off, is that then you've got to kind of move on to be an OP, or maybe an EP. Sorry, I'm a Queenslander. When I think OP, I think Bundy Rum. So let's call it an EP, experienced professional. And we want the young professionals, when they've finished their journey, to make sure they move on to the broader club. So what we've come up with, and happy to launch tonight, is the Buddy Program. And what the Buddy Program is, very simply, is that we're going to pair those young professionals that would like to learn a little bit more about what happens with the standard events. Coming along to one of our lunches or member-only events and getting involved. And also we're going to extend it, if you'd like, to also work with that standard member, and maybe you want to have a chat about some career challenges you have. So that's essentially what the Buddy Program is all about. So we want to nurture the future leaders of the mining club. If I just go to the next slide. So very simple. Application is online. So if you go to the Mining Club website, just look under Membership Buddy Program. There's a little introduction there. There are 2 forms. If you're a young professional, download the application form called Mentee. And if you're a... What happened then? I see a little chuckle there. And if you're a standard member, just download the form that says Mentor. The applications will be open till the 3rd of December. We'll do the matching process and hopefully you can get underway by the middle of December. So that's all from me. Really encourage all the young professionals in the room to get involved, and obviously the standard members as well. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Yalu.
Thanks, Craig. Craig reckoned he had the toughest slot. I think I've got the toughest one, mate. I'm looking around the room and there's a few empty drinks and some thirsty looking people, so I'll make this pretty snappy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yalawiri McGrady and I'll be closing the formalities for tonight. Firstly, on behalf of the young professionals, thank you to our awesome panellists for sharing their insight and knowledge. A round of applause, please. Secondly, a big thank you to our amazing event sponsors for tonight, which is Sandfire, IGO, Micromine and Grounded. A round of applause, please. Also, our annual partners, which is made up of Goldfields Australia, Ruck, IGO, Micromine and Grounded. Thank you to your contribution. A big thank you to our YP members. We appreciate your input, passion and membership. We are creating something special here within the YP club. let's keep the momentum going as we build towards a big 2021. The WA Mining Club Young Professionals are committed to delivering value for all our YP members. We have a few exciting initiatives to go along with our buddy program coming up in 2021. Please stay tuned. For our guests here tonight who are not members, please come and see myself or the rest of the committee members and to find out more about how to join. Lastly, thank you to the WA Mining Club staff, Young Professional and WA Mining Club committee members for your commitment and drive to making these events possible and regular. Thank you very much. We are in the process of holding a members-only event early in 2021. Please stay tuned on our socials to see more information about that. Again, this does conclude the formalities for tonight, but please stay for drinks and food, which will be served till 8 p.m. Thank you very much. Good evening.